Compartmentalize.
Screw your freedom.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Welcome back to the Prepared Mind channel. This is one of the most important days I think we've ever filmed a video. I mean, seriously, how many times can we say that? Well, in the world of SHTF, we can say it all we want because we're the adults in the room. We're the grown-ups, and we're in charge of our own lives. We get to make our own decisions, and we get to see the world for what it is. And folks, the world right now is really messed up. Now, this question's been going around, and I sent this out to quite a few people. A lot of research has been done, a lot of thinking. I was talking with Crispy Bacon, and I'm going to see if I can get him on for next week's discussion because he has a great deal of experience in the Eastern Bloc nations of Europe. Now, Eastern Bloc nation, yeah, like Ukraine. There's a lot of information out there about Ukraine, but guess what? The mainstream media isn't going to tell you a damn thing about it. Well, I am going to. I want to thank a very good buddy of mine who sent me all kinds of information on Ukraine just so that we can benefit. Put it all in order for us. So the big question is, why the hell are they fighting over Ukraine? Well, we've been led to believe that NATO and the United States of America are there to help Ukraine. That's right. They're there to make sure that the Ukrainians live a free, prosperous life. Yeah. And I got a bridge to sell you that actually, no, how about a tunnel instead? A tunnel that goes all the way to Hawaii. No, they're not there to help the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are poor people, folks. If they had it better in Ukraine than we have in the United States, why are so many immigrating here? As bad as you and I think it is now, folks. The American dream is still something that they try and sell about the United States around the world. Okay, so let's get in it. Why are Ukrainians so poor when it is actually a very rich nation? Did you know that? The Ukraine is very rich. We'll get into it. Why does Biden want his grubby little fingers in there? And same with Mitt Romney and Nancy Pelosi and all the other politicians and bureaucrats and businessmen and Klaus Schwabs of the world. Right? Why does the Western Economic Forum want its influence in Ukraine? Why do they want Russia out of there? What's the real story, folks? Well, a lot of people ask why. Let's do this. The Ukraine, folks, is number one in Europe in proven uranium ore reserves. It's number two in Europe and 10th in the world for titanium ore. It's second in the world in terms of explored reserves of manganese ore, right? 12% of the world's reserves right there. In other words, oh shit, John, you're talking about resources, natural resources. You bet I am, folks. It's the second largest iron ore reserve in the world. The world, folks. A lot of iron there. If you wonder, how Russia used to be a powerhouse when it was a Soviet Union, a large part of that was because of Ukraine. But we're not done. But wait, there's more. It's third place in the world in area of black soil. Folks, that's really good topsoil, right? The world's first place in sunflower and sunflower oil, second place in barley production, fourth place in barley exports to the rest of the world. In other words, folks, this place is kind of like the breadbasket of Europe. It's the fourth largest producer of potatoes, an incredible source of carbohydrates, simple sugars, starches, energy, and full bellies. Also, potatoes are used to make vodka. All right. It's the fifth largest producer in the world of rye, another grain. 5th place in the world in bees. That's right, honey, bees, the ability to pollinate things. 8th place in the world in wheat. 9th place in the world in the production of chicken eggs, right? 16th in cheese. That's right, they know cheese in the Ukraine. Ukraine is an incredibly valuable natural resource center, right? Where do I want to stop? That we're just going to go with that. We're going to go with that, folks. You now have an idea why little Mitch Romney, why the Bidens are there for energy, right? It's incredible. It is incredible, and they are fighting over it. They don't want us to know, but hey, if the country was being properly managed, right, wasn't full of corruption and graft and bribery and crap, why would a country this wealthy want someone like Hunter Biden, who has no business experience, no executive experience, no energy experience? Why would they want him on their the board of Burisma, Ukraine's energy company? Why would they want him? Well, that's right, Joe Biden. Stinky Joe, back when he was vice president, got him in there. And Stinky Joe is now president, and he doesn't want to lose control of this. So it's not about the American military. It's not about Russian military. I mean, there are concerns, folks, about, how do we want to put this? Security, military security. Well, there's two sides to this story. What benefit does it give you and me here in the United States of America to have our military in Ukraine? Are you saying that our ICBMs have to be in Ukraine to be a deterrent and a nuclear threat to Russia? Or can we do it from our other bases back in Germany, the UK, Greenland, other places around the world? Yeah. So we don't get a whole lot out of that. Do you and I benefit from the Nord Stream 2 pipeline? Do you and I benefit from food being mishandled in Ukraine? No. See, if they were a better run country, they would be more prosperous and we would all be more prosperous. Sadly, it's not. Now, on the other side, they say, what do they get out of this, right? Well, the Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, on Thursday, he said, look, here's his comment on the scope and goal of the military objections to NATO being in there. And he cited Putin's aim of the demilitarization and the denazification of Ukraine. Well, wait a minute. Now we are hearing something a little different. Here's the quote from Peskov. Ideally, Ukraine should be liberated and cleansed of Nazis and pro-Nazi people and ideology. Interesting, right? Saying that their operation, the Russian operation, would end once these objectives have been reached. All right. Well, don't forget, folks, they're fighting over the Chernobyl plant, and it looks like the Russians have beaten and taken the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which was that giant disaster from 1986. And Ukraine and Europe are trying to say, oh my God, all of this is happening there. You're threatening us with radiation. Well, apparently the radiation is so not bad that the fighting of the war in there, right? Why would they fight in there if the radiation was that bad? They claim that the radiation is bad, and then they're fighting in there. So this is just fear porn for the rest of the world. Oh my God, remember Chernobyl? It's there. Unbelievable, folks. Unbelievable. Today we were given a list of very important Ukrainian websites to consult if you want to know what's going on in Ukraine. Right, the armed forces, the president, the cabinet ministers, defense ministry, airports, and other infrastructure. Don't use the free press if there is any such thing. Get your propaganda right from Ukraine. The culmination, the epicenter of all this corruption. Go ahead and get your information from them. They'll tell you exactly what you need to know about this. Now, can this expand into a wider war, a nuclear war? Joe Biden says, I don't know. Literally, folks, asked if Russia was threatening the Americans United States of America or the United States government with nukes? I don't know. What does he know, folks? If you want information, you're not going to get it. Well, at least you're not going to get a fair look at the information from the Ukrainians. You won't get it from the mainstream media. You won't get it from politicians, and you won't get it from businessmen in Europe, because they're all corrupt. They're all very corrupt, folks. I mean, let's just get into this here, right? The Chinese are looking at what's going on and saying, Taiwan is not Ukraine. It's not an independent state. Taiwan has always been a part of China. Well, China at this point is seeing that NATO, the United States government, military, they're not taking any direct action against Putin. Could it be because Putin has an advantage, that Putin's telling the truth, that it is all about corruption and money? Well, that's never stopped them from starting a war in the past. But now it's certainly encouraging China to take a closer look at maybe invading Taiwan. In fact, today they flew a lot of their planes back over the top of Taiwan again. So keep that in your SHTF hopper. China? Oh yeah, possibly. War in Russia? Wider? Quite possibly. We've got some serious concerns, folks, over what's going on. Where do we go? Get your questions in. Jolene's going to put them up in the second half of the hour. I've just begun my monologue, but yeah, very soon we're going to get to you guys. Tomorrow we're going to do the Friday free-for-all. We're going to mix it up. We're going to get crazy. We're going to have some fun with all of this, folks. We're going to have fun with all of this. Now, President Biden, he's not sending in the military. Well, okay, there you go. Took that off the table. But he did unleash this is what the quote is, a devastating package of sanctions. Well, unlike a devastating military response, a devastating mumbling, bubbling, blathering BS-trophy, this is so huge that Putin will withdraw. He's going to apologize. He's never going to let sunshine strike his face again, because that's how devastating Biden was with his words. Folks, Putin can cut off Germany and all of Europe, as well as the United States, from its oil and its gas supplies, leaving the world with shortages beyond and below the current levels, and prices would go off the charts if Russia wants to do that. Also, what about uranium and coal, huh? Yeah, we don't need you stinking Ruskies, right? Joe Biden can fart fast enough to supply the whole world with all the gas and hot air we need. I mean, Joe Biden's all over this, folks. Do you agree? Or do you think we've got some problems? Now, I read to you and talked to you all about the reserves, both mining reserves, industrial capacity, and agricultural production that Ukraine supplies, not just for Ukraine, but for the world, Europe, Russia, etc. They don't want you to know that these politicians have their stinking little hands in it and they're working deals. Folks, what they do is they'll create a corporation. Imagine politicians forming a corporation so that it can do business in a country like Ukraine. This corporation goes in and offers its services, its consulting services to a country like Ukraine, their energy, their agriculture, their mining. They offer their opinions as, for a fee. And then these same politicians, let's say, will promise a country like Ukraine $1 billion, a couple $1 billion, $10 billion. And it's understood that when that money gets over there, you will hire a certain company to offer its consulting services for your industrial, your mining, or your agriculture. So this is how people like Nancy Pants Pelosi and other very special gifted insiders They get to have their hands either in a company they create or a company that they buy into, knowing it's going to be mightily enriched the next time US government money is sent over there. So they're buying control by saying, hey, we're going to give you a bunch of money, but in turn, we get our cut. Remember that. Remember that Hunter Biden said the big guy gets his cut, his 10% on every deal that's done. How many billions of dollars went to China, went to Ukraine from the United States government? Now, there's a lot of misleading information out there, folks. There's a lot of information that's considered dangerous. Before, it was all about the cerveza bug. Very dangerous. It's misleading if you talk about it, so you're not allowed to. You can only trust the experts. Remember that? How long is it until my opinions and your opinions, the information we share, becomes considered misleading, dangerous, and harmful by YouTube, Google, social media, mainstream media, and the Biden regime itself? I mean, get this, folks, people could die if they hear an opinion that doesn't convince them that Gigi Biden is godlike. Imagine if me talking about Ukraine and Russia were to be considered a national threat, because I'm encouraging people to think on their own, but Biden or somebody could say, no, you're giving aid and comfort to Russia and the breakaway states, Ukraine. Now, I know it seems absolutely fabulous. What a great idea. Let's protect America by silencing you. That's you right there. Silencing you will protect America. Well, what happened to that thing called the First Amendment? Free speech. The ability to say what you want, criticize political officials, criticize businesses, criticize other people. Right? Well, remember, we were criticizing Dr. Booster Rooster, who at every step of the way was cock-a-doodle-doing his head off. And when it was discovered that he really wasn't speaking truth or fact, what happened? Right? We criticized him and we got silenced. Well, I wouldn't be surprised, and don't be surprised if this happens again. Now, you remember this guy. His name was General Michael Flynn. He has now called out Biden on all of the mistakes, lies, and BS. Now, I'm going to quote you. I'm going to read a quote. This is what he had to say about Biden. Now, again, think of this in the context of misinformation. And oh, by the way, I'd like to thank Ooman for closing the shop up, letting me in there so I could hang a bit and talk to you guys. It has been quite a day, has it not? It's been quite a week. Has it not? I tell you. The lighting in here is just kind of crazy. But, I like it. I dig it. Let's do this, folks. Let's look at what General Flynn had to say. He said, President Biden and his failed foreign policy team set the table and sent the invitation, and President Putin came and spoiled the dinner party. He says this is Michael Flynn, General Flynn, criticizing Biden. And trust me, believe me, Biden doesn't like it. They don't like it when their plans go awry. So he says it is doubtful that our U.S. administration, that's the Biden, will change its failed foreign policy, and instead they will make weak attempts to triple down on leveraging this extremely serious situation in Europe to continue to distract from problems here at home. He says, starting with shutting down the Keystone Pipeline, which is a point that you and I discuss all the time. He says, and America's energy independence while enabling Russia and Germany to reopen the Nord Stream pipeline. One has to wonder about the discussions in the Oval Office that came to these conclusions. He's been describing America as a systematically racist nation. The appointment of Marxists and other radical ideologues to positions of power, allowing millions to surge across our southern border. Attempts to federalize and take over our election systems and processes, implementing racist CRT in our schools, our military, and across our government, all along raising the national debt to close to $30 trillion, right? Let us not forget the Afghanistan disaster, the myriad lies about Cerveza bug, and certain Biden-owned laptop and other problems that I can't say the words of or I'll be silenced. Again, to criticize them puts us in a strange position, folks. A strange position. We are in the position of trying to bring, shall we say, fact or truth or opinion to everybody. And it gets more and more difficult all the time. It gets more and more risky all the time. That's why I ask you to, join us on Patreon. Patreon.com, sign up there. Help us keep the words coming out. Help us keep free speech going, folks. Because this is a giant sham they're pulling, and they would silence us. They will if this gets worse, right? They don't want to lose their control. Now, they want to distract us. Now, they need to distract us from the failing Cerveza bug baloney. But now that they switch from that over to Ukraine, and we're finding out what a failure they are there, they don't know where to distract us next. To go into actual war would be a complete travesty. The people don't support it, etc. They need more distractions. They need to keep us preoccupied. It has hit the fan. It's getting worse. Now, John Kerry came out. That's right. John F. Kerry, failed political presidential candidate for the Democrats. Skull and bones buddy of George W. Bush. I love bringing that one up. He says, hey, don't forget us. We're the climate bitches. John Kerry says the Ukraine crisis could distract the world from the climate crisis while having massive emissions consequences. So they want us to remember that the world is getting hotter or colder or something. We're having climate issues, folks. I need to remind Senator Kerry that Germany is shutting down their nuclear power plants, and in replacement of that, they're burning more natural gas, which is only half as polluting as coal, whereas nuclear is not polluting at all. It's considered green energy now. In fact, in Michigan, a bunch of activists, that's right, a bunch of ecological activists, right? Climate activists are very critical and saying, no, we need those power plants reopened. But, hey, we need to blame everything on climate. That's why it's now climate change, folks. It's climate change instead of global warming. But when I was a young boy, it was global cooling. We really, folks, can't get a straight answer out of these people. We really can't. I want to cover another thing that's very possible. Very possible. Biden has a menu of options to choose. Don't think that he can't bring in the military. He could, he could. I'm sure the Democrats in Congress would support that. Then again, maybe not. But he's claiming he has a menu of options. Well, for what? I mean, what's he going to do to Russia? Right? Well, he has massive cyber attack options to use against Russia. Did you know that? And he says, among the options, disrupting internet connectivity across Russia, shutting off their electrical power, tampering with railroad switches that would hamper Russia's ability to resupply its forces. And that was 3 different sources brought that out into the news world. So I have to ask a question at this point. This is where I step back and go, okay, what makes the U.S. military and Biden think that Russia isn't prepared for any and all of these cyber attacks that could occur as a retaliatory measure against the military attacks, or shall we say, cleansing of Ukraine, right? And I need to ask the question, can Russia repel these attacks coming from U.S. forces and also counterstrike with cyber attacks of their own on U.S. and European forces, right? Like any war, both sides can launch bombs, Are they accurate? Do they hit the target? Do they explode as desired? Do they create the effect that was desired? Right? Cyber attacks are just not guaranteed to cause problems, but they do. Right? Do we want to enter into a volley and exchange of cyber attacks? And the other thing is, what makes the Pentagon and White House idiots think that they can attack another nation and not risk a retaliation in true military fashion? For example, let me just put it to you this way. If my neighbor cut my phone line, a cyber attack, and then yelled, "Cyber attack, take that, John," I would know it was him that did it, right? He telegraphed it. He let me know he did it. I would know that this guy did it, and a squared off punch to the beak could be a retaliation, and then worse, right? So any action taken by Biden is going to be retaliatory in nature, is going to be viewed and understood as such. It's going to be known where it comes from, and it could provoke a lot more trouble. You see, this is kind of a problem with this whole cyber world stuff. Everything is Russia, Russia, Russia. And all the cyber attacks are always Russia, Russia, Russia. Well, if Russia is the one doing all the cyber attacking for the last 10 years, it sounds like they have an experience that we don't, or has our government, CIA and MI6 and Interpol and Mossad. Are they all cyber attack experts, along with the Syrian Electronic Army and the Iranian Electronic Army? Big questions are in front of us as to what is going to happen. Question I have for you now is, should we keep talking about this? And are you prepared? Ukrainians today discovered it's time to get out of Kiev, right? It's time to get out of Dodge. They're leaving the city. There's bombs going off, helicopters, tanks, missiles, shit blowing up everywhere. Yeah, it's a war zone, literally, in many places. Russia is now willing to accept Kiev's surrender. It's conditional surrender, meaning Kiev can sue for peace at this point. Pretty interesting, huh? Remember that. Kiev can surrender to Russia. And I think Russia has said its demands are they want to get rid of the fascists. Now, you would think that Antifa would be all for this. And since, well, the Biden administration loves Antifa burning and looting in America, that Biden would support getting rid of Nazis because, Antifa is good. Or could it be that actually the fascists, the government corporate buddies, really are running Ukraine and running it poorly and into the ground and enriching themselves, risking, right, prosperity and freedom for the rest of the country, threatening it always, and keeping their standard of living very low, even though it is an extremely rich country. So that's why Ukraine is important. That's why prepping is important, because now we've been shown, it's been demonstrated that we could have the same problem very, very quick here in the United States. If you're up in the cold zone, you know what I'm talking about, right? Natural disasters, they show us what's going on. We also see the problem with radicalized groups. Right. Everything, let me ask this. With corrupt politicians and a corrupt media here in the United States of America, how do we know what is best for Ukraine, concerning Ukraine, and how to deal with this Ukraine issue? You and I haven't been able to get to the facts, to the truth, through the mainstream media, have we? Has the president been full, forthright, open, and honest about his dealings, his interactions? U.S. corporate interactions. Remember that during the Trump administration, there was a woman there who was coming out during I think it was the impeachment trial. And she was some sort of badass bureaucrat. She was a huge diplomat for the U.S. And she was doing all she could to hide all the corporate mayhem and then throw everything at Trump's feet. We can't get a straight answer out of the media or out of the government. So at this point in history, at this point in SHTF, and at this point with media sellouts for socialism, anything that they say, the mainstream media, is the opposite of what is good for America, what is good for our rights, and what is in general good for morality for ourselves and the world. And enough said on that. Right? We need to keep talking here and sharing information with one another. People we know and love out there have information that is valuable when we get it. I found that out today. Right? There's people out there that see you as a source of information. On The Prepared Mind at patreon.com, you can go there and get an entire list of where Ukraine stands in the world. How many people are asking the question, what is this Ukraine thing? Once they start seeing all those percentages and how they rank, you go, oh yeah, now I get it. Right? People need this information, so share it. Share that address up there. Spread the word on, what the hell is going on. Spread the word on the need to be prepared. It is incredible. Let's do this now. Let us get to your questions. Your questions.
Are you ready?
All right, as usual, I've got a ton of topics on here I would love to get to, but I want to hear what you guys have to say. My brains are literally melting down from all of the information overload. I get probably 50 emails a day, and everyone asks me the same question. And it's like, do I answer that question 50 times, or do I put them aside and say, look, you come here in the afternoon or in the evening, you can send your questions to Jolene, and she can ask it, and I'll answer everyone's question at the same time. I do my best to answer text messages, emails, etc. A lot of stuff gets lost. A lot of stuff disappears. A lot of times I just don't have the time. Right? It's difficult, but we're doing a good job, I think. And I want to thank you for all your support. Thank you for the questions. But coming here right now is really the best time to ask questions, because it's not, the answer just doesn't come to you. It comes to everybody. And I know you have fabulous questions. So we got Fourth Dimension. That's Kaz. And he shows up and he says, do you think the trucker protest will be used as a false flag like January 6th in the form of an OKC style attack to usher in Executive Order 13603, Emergency Preparedness Act, aka martial law? Well, there's a lot of stuff in Kaz's question, and we can unpack it. First of all, the executive order, which would be signed by the president into action, EO 13603, is very similar to Canada, what they just did with their Emergency Act. Now, the deal with the one here in the United States is it authorizes the president to look at everyone and everything. The food you have in your house, the fuel in your gas tank, your car itself, your labor, that is your ability to perform a task. The government looks at everything that is owned by private individuals and corporations, as well as public holdings, that is city, county, and state. And it can at any time at once, if it declares this emergency, it can at any time at once commandeer them, that is take possession, including possession of you. Interesting how in an emergency, the government sees you not as one of the sovereign people, but as a resource, a human resource that they can command at will. Now, you're asking if the trucker protest can go awry or turned into a false flag in such a way that it could accelerate or springboard us in to some sort of national emergency. Well, it's fascinating. Criticism of Putin and criticism of Trudeau is real high right now. Criticism is high Trudeau for what he did with his Emergency Act. And we, the people, have been criticizing our government at the local, state, and national level for the cerveza bug actions. You know, it's not impossible, Kaz, in my opinion, that we could end up with a false flag that makes January 6th look small in comparison, that a lot of damage and destruction could be done that makes Oklahoma City look small. There could be a lot of damage that makes 9/11 look small, but I think that would take a lot more coordination and planning and timing, etc., to do a lot of small activities that look like something that, you know, silly American truckers could do, or some radical right-wing extremists with a couple of diesel and nitro fertilizer. I mean, it's very possible, but I'm thinking more along the lines of having a cyber attack on the grid and blaming both Russia and their right-wing extremist allies here in America, the truckers. You know, I could see them doing a 1-2 punch and tying people who want freedom here and tying them to the great enemy of Russia over there, and using that as the impetus and saying, yeah, look how abusive they are in Russia, right? Putin has now threatened that there'll be mass arrests for people who are out. You know, will the USA, France, Canada, and the rest of the BS free world complain that Russia's violating their people's rights and their free speech and everything else? You know, I don't know. I think they can all use this, all governments, this idea that you're not allowed to speak anymore. And the cerveza bug allows the government to tell you to stay inside. And the government seems to take great delight in using every single instance out there. Don't ever let a good crisis go to waste, said Rahm Emanuel, Obama's good buddy from Chicago. It's possible, Kaz. And of course, I will be, well, very, very carefully watching everything. It just depends on what it is and where they're at. Remember, they're the ones that hold the keys and the power, right, in Washington, D.C. They get to decide when they perform a false flag, or they need to, or the World Economic Forum says we need an economic collapse, or we need a Wall Street crisis, because crisis gives them an opportunity to offer their solution to the problem, which is usually to enrich themselves. So it is up to them when they decide what they're going to use. But yeah, everything that happens now creates an opportunity for them to say, this is coming. Do we want to use it? And they've got a series of plans over here. How do they want to use those plans and coordinate them with other activities? It becomes a very scary little world. Jay Clifton checks in and says, I think everything going on in Ukraine at this time is the complete destruction of evidence from our president's son, that would be Hunter Biden, dealing to our own president's dealings. Your thoughts? There was footage and then news reports today of Ukrainian ministers or bureaucrats burning, destroying materials in Ukraine. Now, what were they burning and destroying? I don't know, right? And no one knows. They were burning and destroying this information. So we have to ask ourselves, who are they protecting that information from? The Russians? I mean, were they hiding information on all the valuable resources and assets that that Ukraine had? No, Russia already knows about all that stuff. They would be hiding information or destroying information to protect it from falling into the hands of the Russians. So what would they want to protect? Well, Russia says they're there to get rid of government corporate incest, right? Screwing everybody that they know and stealing all the money. So they were probably burning that. Now, once again, if they're burning that information, hiding who the bad guys are, hiding who the companies are that are in there, hiding the names of the players so the Russians, one, can't get it, and if they're Ukrainian, go after them Or if they're American, English, French, Spanish, German, Italian, they can hide those people as well. They don't want the Russians getting a hold of this information. So when we circle back to your question, and that unlike Jen Psaki, I can circle back, right? The president's son is heavily involved in Ukraine, in its dealings with energy and good God, who knows what else. But Mittens Romney was quick to come out and criticize. Biden is criticizing. Nancy Pelosi has had her fingers in hot water the last couple of months over her insider dealings and tradings. Could she have something over there in Ukraine? Wouldn't put it past them. Wouldn't put it past them. Now, Biden, the Biden administration, could they have given the Ukrainian government a call and said, hey, why don't you go burn all that information right away? You bet. Right? They're destroying evidence. We know that. Evidence of what? Probably evidence of the very thing that has gotten Russia into there. You betcha. Mark the Prepared says, Ukraine was looking to join NATO. Did this upset Putin, and is that why there's a war? Or is it about protection of the Russian voter speakers? Which side is more agreeable? What we can understand is that everyone's worried about whatever hat they've thrown in the ring, right? Everyone has an axe to grind with someone they don't like, but everyone's also concerned about their money, their dealings, their protection. So let's start with NATO. Ukraine realized and understood that they're pissing Russia off more and more. They want to continue to control their little country, Ukraine, and use it as a personal piggy bank, if you will. Right? Pillaging and looting it for themselves, not being good stewards of the land or servants of the people. And Putin, we did put this, Jolene found it, and thank you, Jolene. She found the interview with Vladimir Putin regarding NATO and why he wouldn't want it there. Right? He said, if Ukraine became a NATO member, all it would take is one screw up, and the rest of the world would be required, the rest of the NATO world, which would be Europe and North America, would be required to come and join Ukraine in a war against Russia. You see, they would be obligated to fight on behalf of Ukraine and their bad decisions. And Ukraine, according to Putin, has demonstrated that's all they do is make bad decisions. So why would you let a very poorly managed country join a military organization? He says that's not a good idea, not with Russia being a nuclear superpower still. Russia and the United States are the nuclear powers in the world. Why would you let basically an imbecile affect everyone else's need? So there's your NATO issue. Putin did not want that. He did not want Ukraine, which is completely corrupt, to have the ability to call its good buddies to fight its fights for them. You see, Ukraine and the Nazified government there that doesn't like Russia. Right? It could start a war, a fight, a skirmish with Russia, then call all its buddies to come fight against Russia for him. And again, Putin has said something like, well, why don't you let me join NATO? I think he asked that of Hillary Clinton. Why don't you let Russia join NATO? Doesn't that make sense too? If we're all on the same team, we can all be good buddies. We're all NATO members. Doesn't make much sense, does it? Well, NATO, in my opinion, since the fall of the Soviet Union, really hasn't had much of a purpose anyway, right? Nuclear deterrence does work both ways. It keeps Russia in check, and it keeps America and Europe in check. So if we step back from the nuclear aspect and just look at conventional weaponry, it's still a giant mess. Now, we got Latin America. It says Russian Major exports are oil and natural gas. The sanctions will have a high probability of the exports being stopped and the reliance of having to get imports from allies. Okay. The United States of America, Biden, appears to have helped Russia by killing our own energy independence. That's benefited and financed Russia, has it not? Because they do export oil and natural gas. If the rest of the world says we're not going to buy your exports, well, Russia can still sell it to China. My thoughts about prices. Here we go on the prices. Thank you, Jolene. Let's just say they sanction Russia, and then they say no more gas, no more oil is allowed to come to Europe or North America. That creates a massive shortage. And Qatar and other oil-producing nations have said, we can't make up the difference anymore. We can't supply the difference. So that will mean an oil and energy shortage, and the costs will go up tremendously. Now, let's just say the cost of a barrel of West Texas Intermediate, the cost of a barrel of oil, goes from its current level, about $100. Let's say it goes up to $150 or $200 a barrel. It doubled. Russia can turn to China and say, hey, are you going to pay $200 for a barrel of WTI grade out of Saudi Arabia or anywhere else? Or do you want to buy our Russian oil for $150 a barrel? We'll sell to you at a discount compared to what the rest of the world will sell you oil. China is going to say, we'll take your discounted oil. We'll take your discounted energy. But if we look back at the cause of the increase, it would be a permanent sanction on Russia, saying to the world, you cannot buy Russian oil, except China will say, go stuff it in your ass. We're going to buy from whoever we want because we're China. You see, it creates a problem for the world, well, for Europe and the United States of America. Our energy prices double or more. Remember that whole $10 a gallon of gas kind of prepared mind prediction? It's kind of out there in the future. Start getting used to the idea and stepping back. Yeah, now that we have higher energy prices, Russia, instead of selling a barrel of its crude for $100, can sell a barrel of its crude for $150 at an even greater profit to China, because China needs oil and energy from somewhere else. It's one of the things China is not good at. They don't have uranium reserves. They don't have oil reserves. So they have to buy from elsewhere. So an energy embargo or oil embargo against Russia. No more oil and gas, right? Sanctioning them, embargoing them, right? That would actually create a better situation for them long term by causing a shortage, raising prices, and they could turn around and sell to others like China. All right, let's move on. We got David. He says, it seems as if everyone on social media has an opinion on Russia. He says, I would wager less than 30% of them are educated on the situation and are just emoting. However, some of these dipsticks have millions of followers who are eating it up with a spoon. I am not hopeful for the future of our country. I can't claim to be a geopolitical expert. I don't have a master's degree in political science. I'm not a poli-sci major with degree. I'm just a regular guy. But how many years do you have to pay attention? How many decades are enough to label someone an expert? Not necessarily, well, yeah, we'll just go with that. I mean, we have people who appear on TV and have for the last several decades. They appear on Fox or CNN. They go on the regular news channel, right? ABC, NBC, CNN. They do their prime time news, and here's an opinion from an expert. They're a panel expert that the mainstream media wants to use. And I've been watching them, folks, for 30 years. And after 10 years, you know, I was 30 years old, and after 10 years of really watching these people talk, I was like, you know, their conclusions they're coming to are bullshit. They're wrong. They're offering someone's talking points, right? They're making that shit up. Their guess, and this is a big part of it, their guess is as good as anyone's, because Putin right now has a dozen different options about what he can do and where he can go from here. To know what is in the mind of someone like Vladimir Putin, you can't know what's in his mind or what he thinks is the number one, number two, number three determining factors on what his next move is, his next strategy. Same with Biden. If you think you can guess Joe Biden's next move besides crapping his pants, you're crazy. He doesn't know what the hell he knows or when he forgot about it. It's incredible, right? To think that just because you have a political science degree that you're an expert and no one else is. So I do my damnedest, to get information from as many sources as I can. Mainstream media, these whack jobs on the internet, the religious whack jobs on the internet, right? People who have been prognosticating World War III and nuclear war. People who are saying this is all bullshit. It's just a sham. And everyone's on the same team, including Trump and Putin and everyone. My thing is, if they're all on the same team, including Trump and Putin, why do they need to play these games to convince us to do things? Why don't they just turn their guns at us, start killing half of us, and then go, the rest of you want to live, you'll just do as you're told. We're in charge, you're not. So they're obviously fighting over something real. They don't need all of the theatrics. They don't need it. Why do they need theatrics? Why do they need a bullshit reason to go in Ukraine? Right? Isn't Putin just as capable of going into Ukraine and doing dirty deeds and dirty deals to get money for himself and money for his cronies and money for his country? Can't he just enjoy the screw job that Ukraine is giving to everyone else and get his own piece of the pie? Or does he actually give a shit about his country? And he's not on the same team. And this is really a fight. Right? It's really an argument, a dispute, a political, diplomatic pain in the ass, and that we're going to have to go through this game, like it or not. Interesting. Bonnie Blue 2A checks in. Bonnie Blue, great hearing from you. She says, two-part question. Number one, remember when California state government set up an office, a pseudo embassy in Moscow, and was exploring separatism from the United States of America? What light do current events place on that? Oh man, I had totally forgotten about that idea that California wanted to separate from the Union, that they were talking, to Russia. That was a while ago, right? But Cerveza bug, World Economic Forum, Great Reset, all of that's kind of changed things, hasn't it? Who's in charge? It appears that Governor Newsom owns California at this point, and he'll continue to own it as long as he manages it in such a form and fashion that it satisfies the global masters, right? Governor Cumho of New York treated New York too much like his own personal piggy bank and his own toy, and got himself removed from power. Once again, these are all expendable politicians, and even though we say they're elected, they kind of act more like bureaucrats, like they're being told what to do. So yeah, it's quite interesting. I don't think California is going to join Russia. More likely that it would join China. But here we go. Let's go on to number two. It says, are Burisma, Biden, and Obama just arming Putin the way they armed the Taliban? Isn't the United States of America still using Russia to negotiate the Iran nuclear treaty for reactivation? Is this a payoff? I mean, it actually appears that Biden is helping Putin by killing the Keystone Pipeline in America. Because now we have to buy Russian oil. Prices, folks, a barrel of oil was $50 a barrel when Trump was president. Now it's $100 a barrel, and it looks like it's going to head to $150 or $200. If I had any money and enjoyed gambling, I would start buying oil stocks, right? I'd buy oil. I'd also buy uranium and probably buy gold as well. But I don't have any money laying around. That's sadly, Uman doesn't have any laying around the shop either. Anyways, let's stick here with this, with what is Biden doing? Has the big guy, did he make a deal with Putin and say, hey, look, you just keep all the information you have on Hunter and me and everyone else, you just keep that quiet, and we'll make sure Russia gets to sell a lot more oil here in the United States of America. We're going to keep Ukraine under wraps. Okay, there, Putin, buddy, pal. We're going to keep Ukraine under wraps, and we'll let you sell oil, and we'll bring in natural gas into Europe. Or did our good little buddy there, what's his name again? Hunter Biden. He did a multi-million-dollar deal with the mayor of Moscow's wife. Remember that stuff? So yeah, Hunter was dealing inside Russia as well as inside Ukraine and inside China. I don't know anyone else on the planet who has that widespread of an influence and then was stupid enough to put in writing and verbalize that the big guy gets his 10%, and the big guy is Daddy Biden, the president now of the United States government. He's the president of the United States government. So what could Biden have done that pissed off Putin enough that he would say, you know what, you wanted to play games with me, buddy, so now I'm going to roll into Ukraine? Well, could it be that Biden was doing his own side deals, his own dirty deals, but the World Economic Forum, Biden's masters, have different designs in mind? They have bigger designs in mind. They don't want to be getting 10% of Burisma. They want 50% of the entire country of Ukraine. What do you think is bigger, 10% of the energy or 50% of the whole enchilada? And Putin was like, hey, I said I wouldn't do anything if we maintain status quo. Now, you want to play games? You want to come in and take Ukraine? You want to Nazify it? You want to Germanize it? Right? You want to take more of the wealth of Ukraine and abuse its people? Oh, folks, there were complaints, by the way, of the Ukraine government via its own military of ethnic cleansing. That is the killing of people in outlying regions that they didn't like. You know, the same way that the Soviet Union did when Stalin didn't like Ukrainians, Lithuanians, Estonians, Georgians. Yeah, they tend to kill people, folks, in corrupt regimes under corrupt political systems. And both the Nazi political system, which is socialist, and the communist political system, which is socialist, both those concepts are socialist, folks. Yes, Nazis are socialists, and they're evil. And communists are socialists, and they're evil. And folks, crony capitalism is Nazism. That's fascism. It's corporatism, whatever name it goes by. It is an ugly sister. It's a very ugly sister to communism. Part 3. Bonnie says, okay, part 3. Doesn't shutting down the European Union from Russian oil help the climate cult in their quest? The answer is yes. I had to run everything through the powerful Prepared Mind computer. The answer is yes. Let me tell you how. The European Union gets its oil and energy, a vast percentage of it, from Russia. So if we cut off that supply, cut that off, what happens? The price goes way up. So they have a smaller amount of oil and energy to deal with, and the price is a lot higher. So the average German, Italiano, Frenchy, English, the average European can't afford as much fuel or to travel as many places, and they'll burn less. They'll use less energy. Well, if you make everything so expensive, people can't afford to buy as much. So the factories in Europe that produce goods will produce less, meaning they'll use less electricity that requires these gases and oils and fuels and nuclear fuel, etc. They require this to produce everything. So it could be that if they just raise the price on everything, that they'll use less energy. So yeah, you can see how the religious climate cult can see a benefit to much higher energy prices. Well, governments love higher energy prices because they can just also add more taxes to that. I mean, what's the difference at this point between $9.50 a gallon and $10.50 a gallon, or $11.50 a gallon petrol? Right? How do you know if it's the price going up or the government taxing the shit out of you? What difference does it make now, as Hillary Clinton said? Well, the difference is a big difference between the people of Europe and the United States of America or anywhere else living a prosperous life, living well, having a standard of living that's higher. But remember the climate game. Remember how the Davos boys, that's the World Economic Forum, by the way, the Davos boys invited Gretchen the climate Grinch, the little 15, 16-year-old scowling scalawag of a Swedish little brainwashed tart. And they were going to actually listen to what a child had to say, right, with regard to climate change. No, it was a sham. They were like, oh, little girl, we see how you young people think. Tell you what, we're going to help the climate by making you all pay higher taxes and have less of a standard of living, have a lower standard of living. Will that make you happy, little girl? If we punish all of you with higher taxes, higher cost of living, lower wages, and wait a moment, you'll even be happy about it. Thank you so much, Greta. And thank you, Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum, for making my life more difficult. I really appreciate it, you bunch of a-holes. All right, we got Bonnie Blue is back again. Oh my gosh. Wasn't it 2 months ago that Russia told its people to prepare? I think Putin is prepared to go it alone without the rest of the world for a while. I believe Russia did. I believe China did as well. China said, we're going to have food shortages. Yeah, we got some problems coming. They're very big. Are you prepared? Do you have food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense? Do you have a plan? Do you have food for your animals, your cats, your dogs, your livestock? Do you have adequate food supply, grain or feed for your bunny rabbits, your chickens, your hogs? Are you prepared for slowdowns in delivery, massive increases in cost, as well as government interference in the form of regulations and lockdowns, roadblocks, and other garbage that could come up as a result of people's objection to being treated like cattle by the government? Are you prepared? We're going to keep at this, folks. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, mañana, it's coming. There's no way out of it, folks. There's no way out of this SHTF except the hard way. Right? Now, if you think of yourself as a piece of food, you get chewed up, then you get swallowed, you get digested, and eventually you get crapped out. Well, we all get to make that journey. Right now, we're getting chewed on. We've got a long, difficult journey, and we're going to see a lot of shit before it gets any better. Godspeed to you all. Chance favors the prepared mind. Is yours, and Semper Fi.
I'm going to do the